We are a couple of seconds delayed here in the blocks up in Copenhagen. People are still coming in. But I'm told we can start up in just a few seconds. We can. So, ladies and gentlemen, by 2050, 84% of Europeans will live in cities. That is not a challenge. It's a once-in-a-generation chance to reinvent how we live together, how we live in a fairer, greener, and more beautiful way in our cities in Europe. Since the launch in 2020, the new European Bauhaus has sparked thousands of local experiments. But the big question is, how do we turn those experiments into a movement strong enough to transform Euro's cities for good? My name is Torben Klitgaard. I am welcoming you all here today, especially those following online and you present, of course, here in Bloxup. I'm the CEO in Bloxup, and Bloxup is an urban innovation center and a co-working space. And I am the proud partner of being part of a collaboration here in Bloks in downtown Copenhagen in Denmark, alongside my very good colleagues from the Danish Architecture Center, the Danish Design Center, and Creative Denmark. But I'm also, and have been, a proud partner and project coordinator of Desire, one of these 6 New European Lighthouse demonstrators. It's a little bit difficult to say if you say it fast, New European Bauhaus Lighthouse demonstrators, but I think I got it right. But they were set in motion by President of the Euro Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, as we all know, exactly 5 years ago today. Earlier today, the President was having her speech of the Union in Brussels, and actually 5 years ago on this day, she launched the initiative, the New European Bauhaus. In the Desire project, the 3 New European Bauhaus values, sustainability, inclusion, and beauty, were translated into a manifesto and 5 design principles. We called them circularity, belonging, biodiversity, movement, and aesthetics. These principles gave agency to the work that was carried out in 8 demonstration sites throughout Europe, 3 here in Denmark, 2 in Italy, and 1 in the Netherlands, Latvia, and Slovenia. All aiming at creating local change, local experiments, and local movements to be shared as inspiration of what we call irresistible urban transformation in a wider European context. But we're not here today to talk about Desire only. Today we're gifted to have representatives in the audience, live in Bloxup in Copenhagen, from 2 other Lighthouse demonstrator projects. The Eyes, Hearts and Hands Urban Revolution project, a very warm welcome to you. And people from Bauhaus of the Seas sales project, also a very warm welcome to you. Now, the new European Bauhaus was launched to seek solutions that are not only sustainable, but also inclusive and beautiful, while respecting the diversity of places, traditions and cultures in Europe and beyond. The New European Bauhaus initiative has shown that this can be achieved by bridging the worlds of art, design, architecture, culture, education with science and technology in the green transition. But the New European Bauhaus was also created to face the growing challenges of resource overconsumption, a shortage of affordable housing, underusage and inefficiency in existing buildings. Since its launch, the New European Bauhaus has had a leading role in shaping numerous initiatives across Europe, and allow me just to name a few. The Affordable Housing Initiative is now defined as a New European Bauhaus flagship. The New European Bauhaus Academy is building capacity for sustainable construction. And dozens of European and local New European Bauhaus projects have received funding from the European Commission from 2020 to 2025. And last but not least, pointing into the future, The new European Bauhaus facility is a new multi-annual funding tool to support the European Bauhaus activities going forward from 2025 to 2027. So through this thousands of urban transformations have been designed and implemented at local level. And zooming out, I think it's fair to say that the first big wave of building a European movement is actually taking place as we speak. But the challenges remain, and it's time to ask ourselves, how do we make sure that this success by implementing this variety, the numerous projects at local level within the framework of the new European Bauhaus, how can we make sure that this remains relevant? How can we keep on expanding a European initiative, sharing and scaling local experimentation and learning? And where does the greatest potential lie in all the different project results we've seen over time at local level, at national level, etc.? And last but not least, of course, how can we integrate the new European Bauhaus into future architectural practice as well as urban planning and development? Now, to discuss all this, we have an exquisite group of people with us today. So I'm proud to present Michela Margas, Chair and Director of Research in Industry Commons Foundation, an European Bauhaus expert, and also, I'm proud to say, from now on, a member of the Blocks Up board. I'm proud to introduce to you my colleague at local level, so to speak, Kent Martinussen, the CEO of the Danish Architecture Centre, and also a proud partner in the Desire project. And after the two keynotes, we'll have a fireside chat. But I'm sorry to say we have no fire. But it's going to be a great chat, I'm pretty certain, bringing together two outstanding thought leaders within urban planning, biodiversity, and landscape architecture. Mette Skjold, CEO and Senior Partner at SLA, and a member of the New European Bauhaus Facility Expert Group, and Rikke Gram, Creative Director and Senior Partner at Schönherr. This fireside debate will be moderated by Andrew Dubber, Director of MT Labs. And with that, again, a very, very warm welcome to you online and to the audience here in Blocks Up. I wish you all, both out there and in this room, which is getting hotter and hotter as we speak, a joyful, hot and respectful session this afternoon. Michela, the stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Torben. It's such a pleasure to be here. Yet another NEB gathering. I always absolutely love those. I mean, the energy is always palpable in the room. So that would be me. Torben has introduced me very generously, so I won't tell you any more about that. But I've entitled my presentation NEB Futures, which is actually quite daring, and everybody will say, well, what is going to happen in the future with NEB? And Torben has very nicely described where this started. 5 years ago, someone widened the Overton window to include architects and designers to lead multidisciplinary teams so that we could translate the methodology that's inherent in those professions, which is about hands-on engagement on the ground and prototyping, and connect that to decision-making processes. It had never been done before. It was really revolutionary. It was really daring. And what it created was a virtual cycle whereby we could take hands-on participation, hands-on engagement, and turn it into evidence-based policy. So that was a very, very important moment. Now, the last 5 years are actually encapsulated in this book, which we designed for as a regional innovation model handbook, the RIM handbook, to distribute to all of the European regions. And quite a lot of people here have it, and I know some people here have a hard copy as well. It actually went a little bit viral because we didn't promote it at all, so it was very interesting how many people were interested to get inspired by all of the lighthouse projects that feature in here and all of the pioneering initiatives. And of course, then we had a seminal moment which was our meeting at CERN in Geneva, where we gathered all of the NEB thought leaders for the first time in person. And this was really truly felt like a start of a movement at that point, because the brains in the room is just phenomenal. And this has carried on. It really, I mean, the kind of impacts that have kind of come out of this, all of the things that we started at that point are really resonating today. And even more so, I think, will be important in 10 or 20 years' time. So you can memorize that image. It's going to be one of those kind of for the archives, I think. And then all of the wonderful cities that have pioneered experiments, that were the first wave of experiments for the European Bauhaus. Some of those, I understand, are being represented here today, which is really, really great to see. And of course, the experiments that were being conducted, lots of them feature in the book. This is one of the Desire ones. This was really now the question of, how do we now take those experiments to other locations? How do we scale them? You know, the usual question people ask, and this kind of comes from traditional economics, is like, okay, you've created some kind of a prototype. Is it a product? Can we now duplicate it? Can we sell it to more people? I mean, there's this kind of really basic idea of how you generate value. Well, I have decided to focus this talk on how we can scale and generate value that is economically viable, but it doesn't necessarily follow this really traditional and very basic assumption. So, first challenge to how we scale came beginning of 22. The war in the Ukraine had just broken. This is February 22. And we were having emergency meetings. Everybody in a commission was having emergency meetings about the Ukraine, and yet I managed to put together for the very first time the cohesion funds, the JRC, the NEB representatives, Committee of the Regions, Interreg Europe, DG GROW, all in the same place to see how we could inject a spark at regional level, build resilience into the regional ecosystems with NEB, but then concatenate it with other European instruments that could help it scale, because we suffer from projectification at European level. Like, we finish a project, it's dead, it's gone, it's parked, and then, you know, everybody encourages things to continue, but there are no means to pick it up quite a lot of the time, well, most of the time. And so what was remarkable was that all of these stakeholders were really keen to meet like this for the first time and committed to this. So you can scale by concatenating. It's actually quite an unusual approach. It has never been done before. And the response was fantastic. And what it resulted in, tangibly, is something that's going to be announced at the end of this month, which is the first 20 small municipalities that are receiving a boost. There had to be new legal things that had to go through huge kind of processes to enable this new instrument, to actually inject regions with the ability to be able to scale with the local talent, the local intelligence, scale from the ground up, and already with the agreement that certain other mechanisms like Interreg will pick up the best results. So look out for the announcements end of this month. So we're very proud that that was actually pushed through, because this idea of scaling from the regions to the center hasn't really been happening. But I was talking about Ukraine, and this was 2 million people crossing the border from Ukraine into Poland in 2 weeks. If you compare this to 1 million Syrians crossing into Europe in the whole of 2016, you will understand the potential catastrophe that we could have faced if these people hadn't been handled in a really humane way. And what happened was, we had a high-level roundtable. I was coordinating originally the concept with the high-level roundtable. I had fantastic people on there who were committed to the point of, well, basically it goes with the profession. We are on the ground. We get our hands dirty. So Shigeru Ban and the Polish architect Hubert Tramer went on the border with the Ukraine physically, training the architects, the volunteer architects network, to build privacy shelters for all the families coming in. And people just learned the craft to do it, and basically transferred it on to the next person and the next person. And it rolled out in record time across the whole border of Poland, and then into Slovakia, and then into Paris and other places. Absolutely phenomenal hands-on engagement. So sometimes you get these political things like, oh, NEB is a political directive, and then everybody sits around tables and discusses. Not the case with our profession. Doesn't work like that. It's tangible. We go there, we get our hands dirty, we do it, and they demonstrated that. And this was actually the classic way of scaling by replicating, but it had a different dimension. Because what you're dealing with is potentially a huge humanitarian crisis that you're alleviating. And I think I'll loop back to this later, because I think something that NEB has engendered is really, really related to this. So we are talking informal settlements here. You can't quite see the type because I think it's distorted by wonderful old PowerPoint. But anyhow, we were very lucky to have Sheila Patel on the high-level roundtable, who is an architect from India and works with informal settlements. We're talking slums, we're talking favelas, we're talking refugee camps. There are 1.12 billion people living in informal settlements. 120 million increase in the last 10 years. They're not part of our architectural curricula, really, are they? Right? We're not thinking of this. So the fact that Sheila was on our high-level roundtable, well, the thing was we were forced to think beyond the European, and we are so grateful for that, because we wouldn't have done. We are a bit lazy. We just kind of, I mean, me included, you know, we are comfortable in our little European kind of enclaves. We need to think in this way. So what we can do, if we're going to think beyond European, we're not going to just replicate and then plant something that we have built over here, over there. We need to scale by shifting perspective. That's the correct way to do it. And when it comes to shifting perspectives, this is a floating, inhabited community that lives in harmony with one of the most biodiverse areas that floats on the sea in Portugal. And we embedded ourselves, or we embedded our labs for 3 years there in this Rio de Aveiro in Portugal, looking at strategies of more than human. Now, more than human was something that was from the beginning injected by the Olafur Ellison studio. And we're also grateful for that as well, because it was very much central to the agenda. Now you will know that, for example, the Design Museum in London is having a whole exhibition about it. You can see also that in the initial agenda for certain lighthouse projects, this kind of approaches were already embedded, and we will have, I believe, a nice workshop later by Bauhaus of the Seas on the subject. But then what we decided to do is set an agenda. We said, okay, what we're going to do is challenge the idea of urban planning, which tends to focus predominantly on infrastructure and spatial organization, to actually broaden it to something called ecosystem living. How do we actually cohabit with living ecosystems? And so we focused on that. And we created a manifesto. We launched it in Portugal. If you have that book, you can actually get the link to watch the really lively debate, passionate debate about this subject. Challenged certain approaches and precursors. Sorry, did you want to take a picture of that? You're welcome. That happens to me all the time. And there's more to read about that. There is a wonderful work that was generated by Jan Ullman and Adam Davis. That was a prototype for an ecosystemic handbook based on some of their work with communities in Sweden that reworked the Gropius wheel, the original Walter Gropius wheel, the agenda for the original Bauhaus, into one that's broader, that encompasses circularity, sustainability, democracy, and interaction with communities, and this grassroots approach. You have it in the book as well. Welcome to that. I will give you another download link for the book later, so you can actually get all those references out. So what is it? It's scaling by broadening the scope. We can scale by broadening the scope, injecting the space with a lot of extra value. And this is a lovely picture of an ecosystem that someone casually picked up on the beach when we were doing our labs in Portugal. And it's full of wonderful natural structures, fantastic structures, very inspiring. But what's very interesting about it is that technology and industry is basically entangled with everything that we do. And it's part of our urban fabric, whether we like it or not. And it's a big issue because we shied away from engaging with technological discourse for fear that it would corrupt. And we have a problem. We have addressed this problem last year by introducing just data as a strategy. Data that aims to be judicious, unbiased, safe and transparent, or rather data practice, because we are practitioners. And this has been accepted, well, why? Because we showed 1 year ago, we basically were demonstrating to people what happens. We were asking ChatGPT to draw a couple where a woman is taller than the man. Couldn't do it. No matter how you asked it to do it, couldn't do it. Now they've trained it to do it because it caused a bit of a hoo-ha and it went a bit viral, but basically couldn't do it. So we presented this to AstraZeneca at GoCo across in Gothenburg, and they were in shock because they actually, in health, they are having to deal with much more complex issues than this. So as a result of this, we actually wrote, as part of this book, and don't miss this part of the book, the fact that we are now dealing with a situation where incentivization of conflict generates profit. Just a simple equation. This is where we've landed. Unless we, who build and cultivate values on the ground, in neighborhoods, with communities, translate those into that space, this is going to stay that way. So the question is, how do we bridge between the good work on the ground and the digital systems we build? And this is Kat Austin. She's a fantastic artist who bridges arts and sciences. And she basically says, what if we train AI not on the fragments of the shape of the world that is, but on the shapes of the worlds to which we collectively aspire? And what we're building on the ground is what we collectively aspire. We cannot avoid that at city level. You cannot go away from the human relationship. So you can scale by transposing, and we need to do that. If we're going to do one thing that really well with the NEB facility, that's what we need to do. So just data practice, we're talking about translating the meanings that we all understand at this level into ontologies that are machine readable, that demonstrate what these meanings, what these relationships are. And meanings are socially mediated. And social mediation, it's basically addressing issues of conflict, and it's a phenomenal diplomatic skill. Now, personally, I think this is one of the things we have produced with NEB that's phenomenal, and that is creating a horde of social mediators. Because all of the people who worked with these projects have been absolutely fantastic social mediators, and it's preventative social mediation. It's something that prevents conflict. It's complete antithesis to what is currently the system that's generating wealth. So I often showed this slide here from one of our labs, and I spoke about focusing on where we converge in conjunction with this slide. I want to put social mediation now with that slide, because if we focus on where we converge, rather than in creating categories and division between people, the skill that we're developing is social mediation. And I believe that the people who were the thought leaders and all the people who were built the community around them, who engaged actively with communities, are social mediators, and that's something that certainly the European Commission should recognize and encourage further, because it's a skill that is, at this point in time, as well as in 10 years and 20 years, absolutely fundamental. So once again, the link, if you wish to download. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Oops, sorry, don't. Should we put them there?
So that's me. Well, it's my name, certainly. So good to see you all. My name is Kent Martinussen. I come from the Danish Architecture Center, and this is the title for the next 15 minutes. I'll kind of be, superficial, in the sense that 15 minutes and the subject that I will be speaking about is not too little, but it'll just be an introduction to how the NEB actually had an influence on the Danish government thinking, perhaps we should make an architecture policy, and then in particular, how it's actually aligned with what we did making an architecture policy. So just short here from the Danish Architecture Center, we engaged people in architecture to create change. And I thought I should just let you know that we were part, not me, but my organization, was part of the NEB here in Denmark, here in Copenhagen, together with Torben and others. And our role was in particular to disseminate the work, the focus, the themes, the values of NEB. And I think you could argue, having just in some few minutes seen my presentation, that we feel quite safe, comfortable with the fact that it has kind of pushed in motion a bigger wave that is moving on. Because it's meaningful. But let me, so this is what happens with PowerPoints, they change color, but it's fine. It'll be funny to see what happens. New national architecture policy in Denmark, that's the subject. What does that mean? Does any one of you come from a country that has a national architecture policy which is decided in Parliament? Yeah? Where do you come from? Sweden. From Sweden. And we have one in Denmark too. The last one was from 2007. 2007 and 2014. So now we have been working for a couple of years on the next one. What was our offset? Well, our offset in a group of experts that worked like 2 years to present something to the minister was that one thing, there has been life on Earth for 3 billion years. Somehow we managed to screw it up a little. Sorry my language. And we have some work to do. Second thing that we stand on is a European cultural tradition, history, starting in Greece, where somehow the idea of moving to the cities created the polis, thereby the politicians, thereby architecture to create a city. But it actually went quite fast because just some few hundred years later, 50 years before Christ, in Rome, we have an Italian delegation, don't we? So you guys invented architecture, you know that. but the point is, of course, that you not only invented architecture, you invented, historically at least, what does it mean to be a human being? What does humanity means? And as an individual and as a collective, as we are living in cities. And Vitruvius wrote the 10 books of architecture, trying to explain what does it mean to create those frameworks for humanity. It was sewering system, yes, but it was everything from small, I cannot move, I'm fixed here. But the point is here, how do we define architecture? Well, this was how, kind of in a short way, we defined architecture, that it has to be based on a need in a specific typology and scale. So it could be a region, or it could be a city, or it could be an interior as we're sitting in right now. So that's functionality. Then it has to be based on specific scientific knowledge, including social knowledge. But it also has to strive for an artistic expression. Why? Because humanitas, humans, we are humans. We are people with a spirit, and we get changed if we meet beauty instead of ugly. Is that a given fact? So does that mean that we all agree on what beauty is? No. But we do agree that if we feel pleased, alone and together in particular, we actually work, function, and you could say even function socially better. So we went writing a white paper from the expert panel. That took quite some time. And I'm just here, as I say, being superficial. I'm just giving you I'm sure you can see, those of you who have been interested in the NEB or been involved, I'm sure you can see how it does correlate with the values. So we make three kind of an umbrella consisting of three important for us kind of ideas about what would a new national architecture policy focus on. So less resource consumption, space for nature, and quality for all. It's almost as simple as it sounds banal. It becomes a little more complex. So we identified 9 challenges for Denmark, and I think it might take too long time to read them. But as you can see, we are trying to kind of get around, and everyone who wants can have this this PowerPoint afterwards. But we kind of get around the big scale, even to the more social elements, creating communities and resources. How many resources do we consume? We have a tendency here in Denmark, maybe because we are too wealthy, to build a lot of stuff, and then we don't really see what potentials is there. Instead, we build something new. So that was just to give you an idea of that. We started out having the umbrella, then we identified 3 challenges. So you could say that this might be an inspiration for how can you structure a process of creating a policy. Then we created 9 principles for attractive and responsible life. It's quite difficult for me not to move, but I hope that you out there will be able to see it. So prioritize care and beauty, maintain, renovate and transform, built in a circular way, create space for nature in cities, strengthen holistic land use planning. You can imagine a country like ours in Denmark. Well, you can hardly imagine how it is to live here. 62% of our country is monoculture farming. That has been a huge success, financially and in many, many ways, for the Danes, but it's also a challenge, of course. So that one is about that. How can we change that? We agreed to do it politically now. Foster local values and cultural heritage. We don't want everybody to move into the city, which is almost the case in Denmark. Create diversity in housing types. The market has a tendency to produce what it has always done, leaving too much expenditure of materials and a lot of spaces unused, actually. Prioritize new binding coordination. That's the difficult one, actually, to have really the law, the big complex of laws to be coordinated and have an impact. You could argue that the partly success of Danish development for the last 80 years has been that we are such a small country, everybody understands what we say, and if it's a rule, if it's a law, we stick to it. Not everybody does that. We kind of stick to it. In that case, you could argue we are boring, but that's how it works. So out of that came these 8 dogmas that is organized accordingly to less resources, space for nature, and quality for all. So there's a structure here. And finally, we created recommendations. These are the recommendations. As you can see, they are recommendations for state and municipalities, in particular for the municipal architecture policies, and then into architecture with lower resource consumption, space for nature, and quality for all, and recommendations for industry and cultural change, recommendations for legislation and regulation. So why am I showing this? Just to say that underneath each of those, there is a lot of specific written recommendations. And it even goes a little deeper, because underneath this, we are even pointing out where could we change the laws so they would really align to create the impact that we are looking for. So here you see, for instance, municipal policies, just one page showing the focus of our work. And then we asked ourselves, how shall we actually live together if the policy is being implemented? And for that reason, we asked the new generation of architects and others, people who know about scenario building, and we created 4 scenarios for how could we see a new way of working on specific ways of living in particular geographical dense or open areas. So as you can see here, we try to say there are like 4 situations you can build in Denmark, but how could that be done? So the one I'm showing you now, and I'll end up there, is one of 4. There are 4 films. You can just see them. They're done with architects, but also filmmakers, really as a communication tool to the broader public. You can see them actually down here in our exhibitions. So the point is really to come to the point where the broader public, almost real, like see it on TikTok or whatever, to get a little closer to the idea of how can we live in the future. And this is the scenario building tool we used to work with the architect. And I'm actually done now, because what I've shown you is that we out of the entire kind of horizon of EU, of New European Bauhaus, we created, and we in Denmark, we created in the Ministry of Culture, we created a framework for an expert panel to work. Should have been like 18 months, it became like 36 months, something like that, due to a change of government and so forth. But they kept it, and this was kind of the structure that we went through. And now we are just hoping that we will not have another election until they have finalized the policy. Because of course architects don't make policy, but they make recommendations. So 3 minutes, and here it go, the 3 minutes. Let's have the film. So these are young people thinking, now we will communicate with the broader public about how could the future look if we take in NEB, if we take in the entire new horizon of how should we work in the building sector. Can I just have it run? Yeah. A little up with the sound. Should be text. Yeah. So it'll be a Danish rap.
Er Danmark gadekær og ællinger? Eller er der brug for nye fortællinger? Vi er ikke længere dus med himlens fugle. Vi kigger ind i løbet på en klimaformet kugle. Vi bygger løs. Ingen venter. Det viser sig i procenter. Dem, der siger, hvordan landet det ser ud. Danmark uden glans og charmeklud. De viser billedet på monofunktionalitet. En af grundene til, hvorfor det er sket. Byggebranchen står for 30% af Danmarks klimagasser. Det lyder højt, men det passer. Når vi river ned og bygger op i cement, med venlig hilsen til himlen sendt. Mere af den gas, som ikke er sjov, har vores børn givet os lov. Så det, der bugter sig i bakkedalen, det er asfaltveje op til 5. sal. Hvor du spejder mod et industrikvarter. Og en tid, der ikke er her med. Hvad sker der med mor og far? Fuld vognpark, hvad vi har bygget landet til en bil, ud til centret og et burgermeal. Vi er formet af etplanshuse og medister. Vi er parcellister med en hund, der hedder Fister. Og nu kommer det helt geniale. Det er det her, der har det ægte potentiale. Vi blander byen på ny. Et sted, der kan suge vandet fra den største sky. Lav veje om til grønne viadukter, der trækker vejret og ikke lugter. Hej til nye paragrafer. Byg til, byg om, byg sammen. Vi gentænker hele ejendommen. Det hele behøver ikke at ligne det samme. Tag billedet ned og byg en ny ramme. hvor vi får mere, hvis vi deler mere. Du kan bare låne min plæneklipper, den står lige der. Vi tilføjer det, vi savner. Forstad 2,0, den der favner. Den der bevarer og bygger oven på de gamle haller. Åbn vinduet, naturen kalder. En fremtid, der også taler at stå. Plads til alle, store og små. Historien om byen, der fandt sig selv igen, med andet end boliger, uden bopælsblik, kære ven. Nu er det over stok og sten, til et nyt liv, frisk luft. Tag et hit. Det hele er her. Ingen stress. Fuck, jeg glæder mig til 2050.
That's it. Thank you.
My turn, I think. We've just been hearing about how it's a small country and a very wealthy country and a country with exceptional taste, such that apparently it's very good economic sense and aesthetic sense to bring a New Zealander from the north of Sweden to move 3 chairs. So that's what I'm currently going to do. I'm going past that. I should introduce myself. My name is Andrew Dubber. I am the director of MTF Labs, which is a global innovation community. We run innovation events all over the world that address grand societal challenges by bringing together people from different backgrounds, different specialisms, architects with oceanographers, with artists, scientists, academics, industry. And I am also co-author with Michaela of the RIM Handbook, which she was talking about earlier. So read what we wrote, because it was very interesting. I'm going to be conducting a fireside chat. I will sit here. I would like to invite up Rega, if you would join me here. And Mette, if you could also, please. And I think from there you should be able to see your screens. So on my left, not politically, but geographically, on my far left, I should say, Mette Skjold, who is CEO and senior partner at SLA Architects and member of the NEB Facility Expert Group. Welcome, it's very lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
And Riga Julgram, correct? Creative director and senior partner for Schönherr Landscape Architecture. Both of you work with landscape and the natural world, but from an architecture perspective. You both have similar but not entirely overlapping perspectives on this. We had a brief chat a few days back, but I will get you to show the slides that you want to show. Mette, I believe yours are first.
All right.
I'm not going to ask you to do a PowerPoint presentation, but there's a clicker there should you wish to do so, if you want to illuminate any of the things that you want to talk about. But I do want to start with this idea of what we've just been hearing about, this idea of the national architecture policy.
Yes.
And I think that's a really interesting idea, because there is, in my head, when I hear national architecture policy, I hear nationalist architecture policy, and that it is our architecture for our country, for our people, and this is how we should do it. Is there a way of understanding that differently, that I should frame it slightly better, perhaps? Mette, I'll get you to come in on that.
Well, first of all, I think to regard a national architecture policy as something that is nationalists, maybe it is, because you actually look at what is already there and how can we change it. And how can we put architecture as such into the general development of a society. We are part of doing the physical change, the physical space where people live, where the dynamic of weather hits our society, whether it's drought, whether it's heavy rain. So you could say that I believe that this national architecture policy actually has the potential of pushing both society, civic society, but also on a national level. Because when I am about in Denmark, yesterday I was at a conference about the capital, Copenhagen, how it should develop. I had the minister, not I, but I met the minister of By og Land, so country and countryside, and church, something like that. I don't know how to correctly say it in English. And he was all of a sudden talking about how could we actually provide urban natural spaces that had a huge recreational and nature value and open it up for the public. And I was just like, wow, that's new wordings from a minister. And he was actually, a little bit abrasive to the. There was journalists in the room as well saying, why do you show a big image of nature in the vicinity of Copenhagen in this finger plan in between the fingers of nature? It's not like that. It's not true. We need to change it into that. Is it?
It could move slightly closer, I believe.
This one?
Yeah.
Er det mit hår?
Jeg tror bare, den skal...
Nå, det er dig, Rikke.
Nå. Jeg har ikke engang sagt noget.
Nej. So I believe in it.
Are we happy, sound-wise?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Continue. So you believe in it. I'm interested in the way that scales outwards and back in. What have we learned from outside of Denmark and brought into that, and what can we take from Denmark and extrapolate out to the world? Rikke, do you want to come in on that, or?
No, I think you should just continue. You were about to.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be inclusive here, but
of course. Well, coming from and representing the company that I am part of, working with nature-based design, landscape-led planning, there is no doubt that the demand and the pull for our services are way much larger, are way much matured in other countries than Denmark.
Okay.
So Denmark is Copenhagen. I am in this expert group in the new European facility expert group, where I talk about the Danish examples. For example, Tingbjerg. How do we transform Tingbjerg into being a much more diverse city, a neighborhood, a resilient neighborhood? We worked with that for 7 years. And then the 11 other experts, and I know some of them are listening in, so I dare saying it, but they say, Denmark, Copenhagen, you're all so good. But coming from our professional perspective, Denmark is really low performer nature-wise, both biodiversity in water, but also on land. So, I mean, we should definitely, sharpen our pens regarding nature and regarding how to include the value proposition, but also the risk minimization regarding weather and the unpredictable future that we're looking into. But we still experience it every day. So Denmark really has a potential of being a small country and actually scaling up that very fast. So from our point of perspective, and I think that goes with Rikke's as well, is that a city like Toronto is much more prone, a city like Paris is much more prone, has much more matured the way of including urban nature into the equation of how the physical environment should change.
Right. I'm sure that both of you have thought about this a lot, given what your role is, but perhaps there's a short and simple answer to this question. Where do people stop and nature starts?
We are nature, Andrew. I mean, it's...
I was hoping you would say that, but please expand on that.
But we are nature. I had the pleasure of meeting Sir Partha Dasgupta, he's a professor at Cambridge in economics, and he conducted, the ministry, what is it called again? The Ministry of Finance in UK, the old empire, made a call for Dasgupta to conduct how do we connect economic values, economic equations, GDP, into what do we actually have of natural resources. And he did that with a team for 12 months. And even as an economic professor, saying, well, we need to change the way we develop our society. We cannot continue. But the issue is, in an everyday practice, you don't sense it. So how do Rikke and I push that agenda? And from my point of view, it's about prototyping. And that's also what I'm pushing or trying as a practitioner into the NEB facility expert group, is to actually, all these fundings, 240 million euros, half of them in rollout components and half of them in research and innovation, really sort of get started with a seed funding of prototyping, because that's where the true learning, but it's also where the true value of the potential of nature-based solutions or resilient neighborhoods actually is coming forward.
Right. Just a point of clarification for the NEB heads in the room. The difference between a facility and a round table is what?
The round table, the high, Marga, we have one, in the group of 12 people, we have one Francesca Bria from the same group as Marga was in.
Yeah.
So that was like the initiator. That's where Bjarke Ingels were and Indy Johar. I can't remember all the names by heart, but that was kind of the initiator 5 years ago. And then it's this facility expert group is kind of the sixth mission. So if that, the high table was like the first, then this is the sixth.
Right.
And they never had that many applicants. So I'm really humbly honored, and I must say that it's a fantastic group of 11 people. It started this year. We waited a year and a half for getting feedback on our applications. So I think there's been something going on politically. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I asked you both this question when we met recently, and I'd like to hear a slightly more developed answer than the one that we ended up with. And Rikke, I'm going to put you on the spot here. A landscape architect, it sounds like what you are doing is designing nature. How designable is nature?
Well, it really depends on what result you're aiming at. I think topography, nature, is a background for everything man-made. It's a foundation of everything. Buildings, they're only details in that picture.
Wow.
So being able to design with nature by understanding the way, the mechanisms, if you can say so, or how nature evolves, the more you understand of this and the more you work with it rather than against it. It's like Asian sports, fighting sport. Do you say fighting sport?
Yeah, I'm familiar with judo.
Yeah, exactly. It's like karate.
Yeah.
If you use the force of nature as a tool for your work, rather than pushing it away as we've done for the last at least 150 years, when we started draining and pumping the water away and use the resources in a way that wasn't sustainable, we've been working against it. But we have a long history as humans to work with it. And I guess the book you recommended over your last email, Braiding
Sweetgrass.
Yes, exactly.
Strong recommendation if you haven't read it.
I think this is actually one of the foundations of understanding how to be an architect with and we have purpose in what we do. With nature, we make it instrumental for our needs, but in a holistic way, rather than being a biologist, for instance, is doing something different. But as architects, we also consider aesthetics, among others.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the three pillars of NEB, and
exactly.
we'll come to this.
Yeah.
But there's something that you said that I have to jump on, because I think it's a brilliant thing to say, and I hope people actually sort of took note of this. Buildings are a detail. And I think that's fascinating, because it used to be the other way around. It used to be that there would be the architect who would make the building, and then the landscaper would come and make the entrance pretty.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you're at least advocating for, if not describing as a reality already, is let's start with nature. Let's start with making it correct for nature, and then the buildings detail. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, of course. Even though forming the details is also part of nature, because you are moving resources from one part of the earth to another, and transforming it to something else that it preferred to be on its own, if you can say so. So if every time you move a part of the earth, it's lacking where you took it from. So
Right.
of course, buildings are details, but they are, of course, has a lot of influence on what we could call nature.
Because a lot of the conversations that have been had under the umbrella of NEB, as well as outside of that, is the idea, for instance, of wood as a sustainable building material. And of course, I think of wood, that's a habitat as much as it is a raw material that is kind of a neutral value that can be added. So, I mean, is there any way to do the sustainable, accessible and inclusive and aesthetics of NEB without doing some damage somewhere? Is it just a matter of transferring value from one to another, or have we got a net positive outcome that we can make?
That's a good question. But maybe just to explain this slide that I brought we use this to sort of start a project, but also follow and monitor the value proposition. Either it's a landscape-led master plan of Earl's Court or Quayside in Toronto, then we start by saying, okay, what is at stake here? What is already there? And I completely agree with you, Rikke. It was actually Torben Schönherr who said it to me, because I'm not trained as a landscape architect. I came into landscape architecture 15 years ago. And you are so right. That's how SLA started, by pimping up around for whatever was left money-wise. Oh, by the way, we don't have money for trees, etc. So make it beauty for whatever there is rest, even though we design something different. I don't think we do that anymore in SLA. So that's definitely a shift. But Torben Schönherr, I met him in Gothenburg. We were doing this kind of competing on a large master plan in Gothenburg, Sweden. And he said, you know what, Mette? First came land and sea, then come cities, then comes the public realm, and then comes the buildings. And that's the order it's always been. So we should... Is this me?
I'm wondering if it's me.
Okay. So I'm just... Er det mig? Ind til hagen. Ja, det kan jeg. Okay, så tager jeg jakken. I'm just going to put my jacket on again.
You've gone from what we call Madonna mode to Britney mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I sing?
Please. I think as long as everybody dances.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, so just to explain this overall is that the way we work with nature-based design is that we include different disciplines into the design legend of what we do. Sometimes we start a design by understanding, by listening, by doing field studies, by talking to the existing residents, for example, in a social housing area, and we use maybe almost 1,000 or 1,500 hours, but not doing design. So actually really sort of starting to care, build trust, to understand what is already there. And that, even geological-wise, what's the growth medium? How is the terrain? All this type of what's already there biodiversity-wise. And connect those dots. In order for doing that is to look into the biodiversity performance, the ecosystem services of that sort of equation, and then putting that into a nature-based solutions. And that's where aesthetics, again, comes, because I really, in the beginning, NEB was talking about aesthetics and not beauty. And from my point of view, that was, okay, I understand that beauty is a more common word, but aesthetics, for me, is much more interesting when we talk about it in a natural science perspective. So the synesthesia between all your senses. So when you stand in the middle of a forest, I always get goosebumps when I talk about that, because that's a personal experience that I love. And you see the light, you filter through the branches of trees. You smell, you become connected to living matter. So that's the power, that's the superpower of what nature actually can do. And then it has a lot of value proposition that is just given for free. But we need to shift the perspective in how we operate as society, as urban environment. And that goes with sort of starting to learn and understand. And back to Torben's equation. I don't know why we should have the slides, but now I'm just going to flip through them.
Feel free.
This approach and this value proposition is what we do in every different scale of what we do. Lately, we've done a strategic framework for a large pension fund, one of the 50 largest in Europe, looking into their real estate portfolio existing. How couldn't we create an approach that would put them into a nature positive future? And they put this, according to the taxonomy, they put this as part of their annual report. And as soon as it's on the annual report, then it's kind of, obliging. Then you need to follow up. We work interdisciplinary in many different disciplines. It's been a huge investment for us because we are a privately owned company. Biologists, philosophers, anthropologists, geographers, etc. The philosophers still has, we still have some time for making our clients making it able to sort of being
That's a tough
invoiced.
one to put onto billable hours.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
to the billable hours.
Yeah.
So Desire, we worked with Gadehavegård, a large social housing area just south of Copenhagen. And we were actually also the only practitioner in Urbinat that was under the Horizon 2020 for 6 years. It cost, I think the financial investment in that was 15 million euros. So a little bit more than 100 millioner danske kroner. It took 6 years. And what we were one of 20 doing, real interventions in the physical environment. And that was a little bit devastating to see how little of such a large sum of money actually came out to the citizens. But starting with
Sorry, I'm going to ask you on that.
Yeah.
Is that where your interest in prototyping comes from?
No.
No? Okay. I'm just seeing money or public money not spent well within a public project.
True.
Did
True.
My suspicion would have been, and clearly I'm wrong, but my suspicion would have been that your conclusion from that would be that money's better spent on people on the ground making real things.
It should have been regulated in the very, very early phase. So at least, let's say, just 10% was put into a physical prototype. And it maybe even started with it. But that's the financial loop of how you regulate these type of initiatives. And I guess that's one of the, at least from my point of view, that's one of the key perspectives that we try to push in the expert facility group. Anyways, Gadehavegård was Desire, Urbinat, learning from that, the city loops about material and circular economic solutions regarding materials and economy as such, but also the European taxonomy that came into force 2023 January. So how do we meet all these demands in Gadehavegård under Desire? And here you see and I think one of the key takeaways here is that nature really works well with younger people. Here you have eighth graders that would be children from 13 to 15 years, something like that, more or less. Yeah. Together with our biologist, she was there for 2 weeks, learning them about what do we already have in your home. What does it do for you?
and how do you take care of it? So that was part of our desire or our contribution into desire, but also part of actually looking into the baseline, what's already there, even for us to make the right design legend into a proposal. And there's no doubt that the world really calls for nature-based solutions. I'll be fast. Just briefly touching on the NEP facility expert groups, this fine lineup of 12 people that I really enjoy being in the same space. We are strictly confidential and all that on what we do, but what we can talk about is what's already there on the websites. One of the key overall strategies for the NEP facility expert groups and the NEP facility is that it's looking into resilient neighborhoods. So that's kind of the overall umbrella, both for the rollout and also for the research and innovation.
The real shift there for me is that only 2 of those people are architects.
Yeah.
What's
I think
behind
I think
that?
3.
3? Okay.
I think we're 3. Yeah.
All right. So what's behind that?
Yeah, but I believe that that's the only, I mean, it's meeting the professions that is needed for actually to define, to empower how these calls are made. So that's what we are entitled, or that's what we are obliged to do, commissioned to do, is to define the gaps within what we know, and then sort of, push.
Okay. I want to bring Rikke in here briefly, because you are not involved with this NEB facility. You are what I might call NEB adjacent. What's useful about NEB to you? Somebody who is in the practice but is not in the policy.
I think for us at Schönherr, when we discovered this initiative as a European grown idea, for us it made a lot of sense to be able to tap into the old the old thoughts of Bauhaus, the Bauhaus movement, because that is something that we have always been connected to in the way that we practice, since we collaborate with a lot of different people, from not someone that we have in our office, but we've been working with artists like always as a tradition for us, and also with philosophers, and then of course a whole range of more like engineering practices and all that stuff. So for us, it was really natural to work to collaborate with very different parties, and for that, New European Bauhaus became an instant tool for us, a framework for everything that we've done for a very long time anyhow. Mm-hmm. But it turned into a toolbox that we've been working with ever since, and now it's defining everything we do. All our projects starts by making programs for on the basis of these 3 core principles. Asking ourselves how do we, what is, perhaps I can actually show you a small model. This one, yeah, thanks. This is actually our toolbox. As you can see, it's we call it sense with sensibility. In Danish, smuk fornuft, but it's like a playing with words of the sense that we of course are obliged to make. People actually pay us for doing that, and the sensibility that makes it sustainable and the future cultural heritage or natural heritage. So we call it sustainable, together, and beautiful, and we have these 9 questions that opens every assignment. It makes us evaluate during the process and at the end, together with our clients. But first and foremost, it's a tool for engaging people. And making prototypes is something that we've been doing since 2010, where we are testing one-to-one how we can change the urban environment, letting people try on their own body what happens if you create a forest in the center of the city for a 10 days period of time, and see what happens during the urban or the city festival. How do people react? We ask the police what kind of violent episodes do we experience compared to the year before? Because what does nature do to us?
That's a really interesting question, because the thing that I get stumped on, I have to be honest, and both of you have pointed to the fact that you have professional philosophers working for you on this, but I get sustainable. You know, that I can count it, I can measure it, I can see it in action, and I get the together, I get the inclusion. You can figure out who's included, who's not, that's fine. But the aesthetics thing, I think that's a real tough one for a lot of people. I don't know if that's how forests work, that they could be installed in a city for 10 days and then taken away again. But that seems like that's an aesthetic intervention that has a measurable impact. And is that the thing that I'm kind of missing here in terms of that? Because aesthetics till now, for me, has seemed kind of nebulous, not to put a terrible pun on it, but you know what I mean. It's a tough one to quantify.
Yeah, but then again, the aesthetics is, if you narrow it down to the questions that well, actually this doesn't work. But if you narrow it down to the beautiful, the word beautiful, you can talk about aesthetics as craftsmanship, quality, long-term sustainability, and future heritage. You can also talk about it in terms of the actual site and the spatial anchoring in the way that we work. Does it correspond? Do our work correspond with the site and the nature of the site, whether it's urban or not? And first and foremost, the narrative, the local narrative. What history do we build upon? What's the identity of the humans and the creatures that lives there already? And if you start talking about that, and you get a picture, but also if you start asking people what they would miss if it wasn't there.
Right.
I was in northern Jutland Monday, talking to a whole bunch of people on sustainable energy, because that's the big issue in Denmark right now. Solar panels, windmills, but not only that, also power to X and all that stuff. Huge factory-like installations is about to move onto the countryside, and that changes everything. So there, the theme of beauty and belonging and our understanding of nature was really on debate, and this toolbox worked really well on having this discussion.
Fantastic. Well, there's a lot here to talk about, and we could talk a lot longer, and I'm sure you could have a lot more slides too, given the opportunity. But we're going to have to take that conversation to the drinks and the coffee afterwards. Yeah. Mette and Rebecca, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Round of applause, please.
Thank you so much, all. It's a tough one to wrap up, so I'm not going to.
Thank you.
First and foremost, of course, Michaela Margas, thank you so much. Kent Martinussen for inviting us into how to integrate net values in national policies. But also, of course, Mette Skjold and Rikke Palm. Thanks, all of you. If I should summarize in 2 words, I would say that the European Bauhaus, to me, and I think to the majority of you in here, and definitely to the people we've heard about in the various projects, is the notion that the New European Bauhaus contributes to actually changing your mindset. The beauty of the New European Bauhaus is the fact that it insists on integrating sustainability, inclusion and aesthetics. That's new. And we have seen that since 2020, insisting on creating transformation and change. And the result is ongoingly that people, developers, the whole value chain within the construction industry and all the different stakeholders taking part in this urban transformation is gradually changing their mindset, coming to a result that it's actually about living in nature, with nature. And I will leave you there with a quote I saw the other day in a journal saying that too often, stemming from the discussion we just had at the fireside, the panel here, the quote says, "Too often green space is seen as decorative. But in these extreme climates that we're all experiencing throughout the world, it must be both performative. We need, therefore, to design for shade, water efficiency, biodiversity, and social life all at once. That's the name of the game, and I truly believe that New European Bauhaus contributes to doing exactly that." So thank you all. Thank you, the viewers listening in, looking in online, for celebrating 5 years of New European Bauhaus initiatives and activities throughout Europe with us this afternoon. Thank you for taking part. And thank you in the room for being here, for listening, hopefully for reflecting, and hopefully also for taking bits and pieces with you back home, sharing with your colleagues, with your family, with your friends, etc. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you all.